is the author? That is the mystery to be solved in the show Gravity Falls. In my last Gravity Falls video, we covered season 1. And we did not get the big reveal in the season finale. So here we are for season 2. Just a reminder that this is not a recap of the show Gravity Falls. This is me watching the show for the very first time and trying to figure out the big mystery before the show reveals it. And if you're just jumping in now, go watch the first video where I cover season 1. Here's how this works. After every few episodes that I watch, I jump into here and I break down the different suspects, theories, and clues that I have for who I think the author is. That way, at the end of this video, when we finally figure out who the author is, we can look back and we can see exactly how close or far off I was from getting it right. So with all of that out of the way, let's jump into episode 1 of season 2 of Gravity Falls. We are back, baby! After the season 1 finale, I was super excited to jump right into season 2. And boy, the first episode of season 2 did not disappoint. We get a ton of stuff relating to the big mystery, and I even caught a bunch of codes in the episode. Basically, the episode starts with Stan. He's down in the secret lab beneath the mystery shack working on this giant machine. And we saw this giant machine last season. And basically, Stan is saying a bunch of weird stuff like 30 long years and it's all led up to this. And if I finally pull this off, it'll all have been worth it. And the very ominous, if anyone ever finds out about this. So basically what we can gather from this is that Stan has been in Gravity Falls for the past 30 years working on this machine. That's insane, dude. The big question on my mind is, what does the machine even do? Gideon last season made it seem like this machine was some sort of super weapon, but I just don't buy that Grunkle Stan is some sort of super villain. I mean, just in this episode, episode 1 of season 2, we see how much Stan truly loves Dipper and Mabel. I do not think that he would put his family in any harm by creating a super weapon. But the machine is definitely something weird, because in this same scene, when the machine is activated by Stan, we cut to a government agency, and the government agency sees some readings on a computer screen, and they're all like, "We haven't seen readings like this in 30 years." Now, this actually tells us a lot about what's going on, right? Because let's take what we know. We know that Stan has been working on this machine for 30 years. And then the government agents say that they haven't seen readings like this in 30 years. So what happened 30 years ago? Did Stan have this machine up and running and then something happened? Maybe something went wrong and he spent the last 30 years trying to get the machine back up again. And that being said, the machine still does not seem to be doing what it's supposed to be doing. Even though he has it operational, it doesn't seem to be functioning the way that it's supposed to. And I think this because we continue to watch Stan working on this computer machine thingy for the rest of the episode. So basically, I say all of this to say that I feel like everything we've seen so far kind of points to the theory that I had in my last video. No, not the Carla, Deuce, and Seuss theory. My other theory. My theory that Stan is actually the author of the journals, but something happened where he lost his memory, and now he's spent the last 30 years trying to recover who he was. And honestly, there's a lot that happens in this episode that points to that theory. So here is what I think happened. 30 years ago, Stan came to Gravity Falls, and he began to learn the secrets of the town. He is the author of the journals. He's writing down his findings into the journals. But then, while working on this giant machine, something goes wrong. It totally wipes Stan's memory. He doesn't remember who he is. He doesn't remember what the machine does. He doesn't remember where he hid the journals. He doesn't know how to fix the machine. And he has spent the last 30 years trying to piece together his past, try to remember what it was that he was doing, try to remember how to fix the machine. But that leads us to our big question, which is, what does it even do? Like, what was he trying to do? And I still just don't understand what the mysteries of Gravity Falls even are, right? Like, obviously we've seen some creatures, but it just seems to be leading up to something. And it's leading up to some sort of big event. How do we know this? Well, in this episode, Dipper reminds us that last season, Bill Cipher said that something big was going to happen that was going to change everything. And we also know that a government agency has been tracking these readings for the last 30 years. And then in this episode, when the agents actually show up to the Mystery Shack, they tell Dipper this: there's a conspiracy of paranormal origin all connected to this town. Basically, is this big machine that Stan is working on, some sort of super weapon? But not a super weapon used for evil. What if the machine that Stan is working on is a super weapon that is supposed to destroy Bill and stop whatever this big event that's going to change everything is? Maybe it's a weapon that will permanently kill Bill. Or perhaps Kill Bill Volume 2. Will the machine bring Uma Thurman to the Gravity Falls universe, where she will proceed to samurai sword Bill Cipher? Perhaps. Now, all jokes aside, I do feel very confident in my theory that Stan is the author of the journals. And I feel like his memory was wiped and he's been spending all these years trying to get it back and try to figure out what he was working on. And there are things that happen in this episode that lead me to really believe that this is true. Like this exchange that Stan has with Dipper. He's like, "Kid, I've always known." He's talking about the supernatural stuff in Gravity Falls. "I've been lying about it to try and keep you from it, try to protect you from it." So this tells us that Stan is well aware of all of the mysteries of Gravity Falls. And we already know that he knows about the journals from last season. But then something happens that throws this whole theory out the window. Dipper finds out that he has only been seeing half of the secrets hidden in his journal. It turns out that the author had started using invisible ink on the pages, and we even get a passage in the journal about this. "I have decided to use invisible ink to keep away prying eyes. Anyone could be watching me." And when Dipper finds this out in front of Stan, Stan seems shocked. He's like, "Holy shit, invisible ink?" Now, Stan knows that there is more in the journals than what he knew before. And that's probably the missing piece of information that Stan needs to get this machine up and running. The reason that this information kind of throws my theory for a loop is because if Stan is the author of the journals, wouldn't he know that he wrote stuff in invisible ink? Well, not necessarily if he had his memory wiped and he was using the journal to try to get his memory back and just refresh himself of what he used to know. But if he doesn't remember that he wrote invisible ink on the pages, then he doesn't remember to look for the invisible ink on the pages. Does that make sense, people? Now, this does not throw my theory out the window completely. If anything, it kind of helps my theory about him losing his memory, right? But that being said, it makes it more complicated. And let's not forget that this is a Disney Channel show aimed at children, right? And so I don't know if you want the big reveal to be something as complex as, well, yeah, no, Stan is the author, but he doesn't know he's the author. But he knows now because he's gotten some of his memory back, but he hasn't gotten all of his memory back. Like, that just feels like a hat on a hat on a hat. And I have been known in these mystery videos, these Can I Solve videos, to pick a theory and then try to find any tiny little proof of evidence that could prove my theory, even though it's not the truth. You know, I'll make stuff up if something contradicts my theory to try to explain how it could actually work. So let's play with some hypotheticals here. Let's say that Stan is not the author. Well, who could it be? Well, I think we get a major hint in this episode that I've never noticed before. In the opening scene of this episode, when Stan is working on the machine, Stan puts on a work glove. And the glove that he puts on has 6 fingers instead of 5. And they make a real point of showing this to us. It is obvious that we are supposed to see that this glove has 6 fingers. And so I'm like, what the fuck does that even mean? And then the next time that they show the journal, I realize that the hand on the goddamn journal has 6 fingers instead of 5, bro. Which goes against the idea of Stan being the author, because Stan only has 5 fingers, as we see very obviously when he puts on the work glove that has 6 fingers. Now, I don't know if I was supposed to be paying attention to the hands of every character, right? But it never really struck me as odd that you know, some of them do have more fingers than the others. Let me just say that. Like, you can see very clearly here that Seuss has 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 fingers, where Dipper has 1, 2, 3, 4. So is it out of the world? Is it out of this world that there could be someone with 6 fingers? And as I started kind of rambling in my own head about the fingers and you know, which is an odd thing to just be obsessed with some fingers, something popped into my head that made me realize that I have cracked the big conspiracy of Gravity Falls. Ladies and gentlemen, aliens. Bear with me. In this show, we have seen all sorts of supernatural things. I mean, this episode that we're talking about right now had zombies in it. And this time, it was real zombies and not just 5 gnomes stacked on top of each other. We've seen ghosts, we've seen demons, but we have not seen aliens yet. And when you add on the fact that the government agents that we meet in this episode give off X-Files vibes, Scully and Mulder vibes, it makes me go, ding, 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 we've got some fucking aliens. These government agents are searching for aliens, or maybe one specific alien. Whenever we learn about Stan's past, there seems to be this connection of heartbreak, of loss of a loved one, right? We've learned a lot about his ex-girlfriend, Carla Hot Pants McCorkle. She left him for another man, and Stan is just left heartbroken. So he packs up his things and he moves to Gravity Falls. And while he's in Gravity Falls, maybe he meets the most incredible woman. And this lady tells Stan that she's a scientist, and they very quickly fall in love. Stan falls head over heels for this scientist. Together, the two of them work in the Mystery Shack on this supercomputer machine. And she tells Stan all about her journals, where she has been keeping all of her findings about Gravity Falls' mysteries. And it's up to her and Stan to work on this machine in the basement that will be a super weapon that could destroy a demon named Bill. And the thing about this alien woman that Stan has fallen in love with, this scientist from Gravity Falls, she has 6 fingers. And while she's working on this machine, the government, the secret agents, start trying to track down this extraterrestrial activity happening in Gravity Falls. But before the government can find her, before anything could even happen, before our alien friend could fix the machine or complete the machine, something bad happens. Something goes wrong. Maybe it was Bill. Maybe it was just a malfunction with the machine. Maybe it was an illness that she contracted by being on the planet Earth that her alien immune system was not able to handle or get rid of. Maybe where she comes from, they don't have white blood cells. Maybe they have like blue blood cells. And all of them have Tom Selleck's face on them. But whatever it is that happens, she dies, leaving Stan heartbroken once again. That's why he tells Dipper that he was trying to keep him from the supernatural things of Gravity Falls to protect him, because he knows how dangerous it can be. He lost the love of his life because of it. And that's who was living in that extra bedroom that we found out about last season. And when we see Stan had those glasses that he found in the room that he was just kind of looking at longingly, like he missed whoever used to wear those glasses, it's because it was his alien girlfriend slash wife slash best friend slash scientist lady. I realized as I was kind of doing that little tangent there that it doesn't have to be a romantic relationship. They could just be best friends, you know? Or maybe it's a parallel between Dipper and Wendy, where maybe Stan was just head over heels for the scientist, and it wasn't like a reciprocal thing. You know what I mean? Like maybe where her planet is like a Spock thing, where they don't have emotions like that. I don't know. There's endless possibilities. And so now, for 30 years, Stan has been trying to finish what his friend started, the machine down in the basement. Maybe Stan even thinks that if he fixes the machine, it'll bring her back. Or maybe she died from the disease thing that we talked about, and it's not about saving her. Maybe it's about stopping Bill. Maybe before she died, she like really laid it into him, like, it is so important that you finish my mission. And so he has dedicated the last 30 years of his life to building this machine and stopping whatever the fuck Bill was talking about last season. Guys, I truly feel like I nailed it this time. The author is an alien with 6 fingers. Now, also, it's important to mention that we get several codes in this episode. On a page of the journal that we see during the episode, we get the messages, "Kill me, please," and "Watch out." Those are pretty wild messages. Then in the end credits, the code was way different than anything I've done so far. The code was actually SMOFZQAJDFV, which when I applied the ciphers that we have been using to it, it didn't, none of it made any sense. And this isn't my first rodeo at this point. So I was like, okay, there's a new cipher that I don't know about, that I don't understand. So I just looked it up, and yes, turns out there's a cipher called Visionary. Vinigere. I mean, look, truthfully, it kind of pisses me off. Like, how the fuck am I supposed to figure that out? Like, I feel like I'm cheating because I'm having to look up how to solve these codes. I just feel like as the YouTube video would be pretty sick if I like had the whiteboard out and I was cracking the code, but I don't know. I would have never been able to figure this out if I hadn't looked it up. And I'm aggravated because I know there were kids that were figuring it out. I just know there were. And I just know that this is one of those things where I think it's unreasonable, but everybody's gonna be like, no, dude, it's pretty easy. It's not that crazy. You just got to pay attention. That's what I got all growing up in school. You just got to pay attention. On all my report cards, a pleasure to have in class. You just got to pay attention. And I mean, I could set up the whiteboard and sit here for 45 minutes trying to crack the code for you guys. It gets boring pretty quickly because I'm just staring at it using all of my brain power trying to figure out how to do this. The only thing I can think is that there is a hint or a clue in the show that I'm missing. Like maybe in the bumper videos when it played on Disney Channel, when it was like, tonight, Gravity Falls, 8/7 Central, by the way, 3 backwards. Like unless I'm missing some important element from when it was originally airing, that's the only thing that I can see. Or maybe I'm just missing something blatantly obvious. And I don't mean to keep ranting about this, but maybe the whole point of it was to use the internet to figure it out. This show was coming out in like the 2010s, right? Internet was in full force. Maybe that was part of it. You were supposed to go to disneychannel.com/Gravity Falls. Make sure you get parents' permission before you go online. And like it taught you about how to break codes and stuff. That feels like it makes a lot of sense to me. But I can't look this stuff up yet because if I look up this stuff, I could accidentally see spoilers. So I just have to sit here and hope that I'm not an idiot. So everybody be nice to me. I'm just a 26-year-old man. I'm just a boy, damn it. Anyway, I looked up how to, do the codes, and they say, welcome back. I wanted to break my computer after I did all that work just for it to say welcome back. But then we get some more codes that were very interesting. The man downstairs is very clever. Can he hide his plans forever? These last two are extremely interesting, right? Because it seems like they are talking about Stan working down in the basement on the machine. And can he hide his plans forever? I am extremely excited to see how this plays out. I truly think that I've nailed it with my alien theory. Now, I don't have a name for the alien yet, but I don't want to just keep calling them alien. So I think I'm going to name the alien character Terry. Like terrestrial, like extraterrestrial, Terry. And I know some of you are probably like, Chase, you just pulling aliens out of nowhere? Dude, we get this fucking thing. Is this not an alien? He's like some sort of demon thing. He could be an alien. So that's what I'm locking in for episode 1 of season 2 of who I think is the author of the journals. I'm locking in an alien named Terry. There are a few more things that happen in this episode that I'm just going to mention because it might be important later on. The first one being that Gideon is in jail. After the events of last season, Gideon gets put in prison. We also get a look at Dipper's conspiracy board at one point, and it gives us some pretty solid information. For example, on his conspiracy board, he has a very, he makes note of the experimental rug that was found in the secret room in the Mystery Shack last season. The rug that caused Dipper and Mabel to switch bodies. Now, because Dipper seems to think this is very important, it made me go, well, maybe it's very important, right? So then I started coming up with this kind of side theory of maybe Stan has switched bodies with someone and he's not actually Stan anymore because of the rug that makes you switch bodies. Also on Dipper's conspiracy board is the 8.5 president of the United States and founder of Gravity Falls, Quentin Tremblay. So because Dipper has it on his conspiracy board, I feel like that's the show being like, hey, remember these things. They could be very important later. Remember the rug that makes them switch bodies. Remember Quentin Tremblay, who buried himself in peanut brittle so that he could survive until modern times. Also, one last thing that is very important for us to talk about. I told a buddy of mine that I was trying to solve Gravity Falls, and he gave me the heads up that in season 2, the big reveal does not happen in the finale. It happens about halfway through the season. So pretty good thing that we know that. Otherwise, we might have just like blown right through it without having a second to lock in our final prediction. This also adds a lot of stakes for me because we now have a lot less episodes to figure out the mystery, to solve the mystery than I originally thought. I thought I had like 20 episodes. So the game's on, the pressure is on, and there's only one way for us to try to solve the mystery, and that is by continuing to watch the show. Let's go watch the next few episodes and see what else we can learn.
You waited. Looks like it's gonna be a while. And waited.
There are a lot of stars out tonight.
Well, this is getting weird. You looked for clues. You asked the internet.
What mystery ham is on the case?
And then you waited longer.
Wow, I'm having a great time watching Gravity Falls. But before we continue, let's take a moment to thank this video's sponsor, Isak's Bar and Grill. With amazing appetizers like deviled eggs, Brussels sprouts, and wild mushroom flatbread, you can guarantee an excellent meal from Isak's Bar and Grill before you even get to the main course. Speaking of the main course, try the grilled chicken, or maybe the grilled salmon. Or if you like to get funky with it, the grilled salmon. Don't forget dessert with the strawberry almond cake or the cinnamon cheesecake. And hey, if you're over 21, they've got beer. If you're interested in a dining experience like no other, then make sure you call 864-402-9831 and tell them Chase sent ya.
Disney Channel's night of premieres is weird as
Crazy wall things happening.
and is all new. It's Disney XD on Disney Channel. You gotta see this with your own eyes. All new Gravity Falls tonight starting at 8 on Disney Channel.
All right, so I think my alien theory is wrong. I just watched episodes 2, 3, and 4 And now I'm getting mixed signals because now, based on the information that we learn in this batch of episodes, I'm thinking that my theory about Stan being the author and he just lost his memory, I think that theory might be right. I know I'm just kind of flip-flopping back and forth here, but I do think that the information we learn in this episode leads us back towards that. Like, let's just start with everything we learn in episode 2, because that one was a fucking doozy. Basically, in this episode, Dipper, Mabel, Seuss, and Wendy find the author's secret hideout underneath a tree. And it's like a fallout shelter. Like, they even say that the bunker seems like he was preparing for a disaster that would last for over 60 years. Now, right off the bat, this batch of episodes all seem to be leaning very heavily into the idea that whatever Bill was talking about in the last season, it's going to be some sort of just big thing, potentially world ending. And I'm fairly certain that that's why the author built this fallout shelter for whatever it was that Bill is planning. Anyways, while they're underneath the town, they're in these underground tunnels from this fallout shelter. They're underneath the town. They're running around. A shapeshifter is running loose, wreaking havoc, trying to kill the squad. Honestly, this hoodie is driving me crazy. It will not stay on. Ugh. My hair is also at the length where it's just impossible to keep it out of my face. I got a comment one time being like, bro, stop messing with your hair. And I was like, fair, good note. So instead, I'm gonna rock it like this. This is how I'm gonna do the rest of the episode. Shapeshifter's running around. Turns out that the shapeshifter is actually one of the author's experiments. And the shapeshifter actually knew the author. And we get a little bit of information about the author from the shapeshifter. At one point, the shapeshifter says, "You'll likely never find him. That six-fingered nerd hasn't been himself in 30 years. This sentence is what has truly sent me reeling, because hasn't been himself in 30 years makes it seem like the author is alive and well, but just not in his right mind. Now, that makes me immediately think about my theory about Stan being the author, but he had his memory wiped, so he does not remember being the author. But Stan does not have 6 fingers. That's another thing that's really fucking with me, right? Because I hadn't been paying attention to these people's hands. But now I'm like a creep on the internet trying to look at women's feet. I'm like zooming in. Anyway, we get one last major hint in episode 2. While they're in the author's lab, they find a laptop that says property of F. Now, I'm assuming that that means that the author's first name or last name starts with an F, which immediately eliminates Stan, right? Because his name is Stan Pines. There's no F in either of those names. So what does that tell us, right? It means like we're looking for a character whose name starts with F, first or last. And I don't think we've met anyone that reaches that qualification, which makes it seem like the author is going to be a character that we have not met yet, which brings me back to my alien theory. Remember when I said that there might be an alien named Terry? Turns out the alien might be named Fairy, but I don't think that's a name. What are some popular F names? Felicia, Ferris Bueller, 77 years ago. So then it's like, okay, maybe it's the alien theory, right? But then let's remember what the shapeshifter said. The shapeshifter said, you'll likely never find him. That 6-fingered nerd hasn't been himself in 30 years. So right there, the shapeshifter who knew the author says he. So now we're looking for a male character. But that does not mean that it can't be the alien, right? So instead, my whole theory works. The whole alien theory still works. It's just instead of it being a female alien, it's a male alien. Gender's a spectrum, guys. It could go either way. Let's not get hung up on the little details. I could be right. Let's focus on how I could be right. Now, truthfully, if you can't tell, this has put me in a weird spot, right? Because it kind of, all of my theories are working a little bit. The Stan theory, that he hasn't been himself in 30 years, But then the alien theory also works because of the 6 fingers, because Stan doesn't have 6 fingers. And then I started thinking about a theory that I had in the last video where I talk about Old Man McGucket. I had a theory that Old Man McGucket is obviously very smart because he was able to build giant robots, which we saw him do on multiple occasions last season. So my theory last time was that he's playing dumb so that he could hide in plain sight. But what if we apply our theory about Stan and just copy and paste it onto Old Man McGucket? But Chase, McGucket starts with an M, not an F. Well, we do not know if McGucket is his first name or his last name, and regardless, whichever one it is not, could start with an F. But here's the thing, dude. I'm fairly certain that McGucket has 5 fingers. Well, it doesn't, the picture I printed out doesn't show it. Well, he's wearing a cast. You know what? There could actually be more to this theory than I originally thought. When I watch the next section, I will pay closer attention to his hands, if he even shows up. But he always shows up. He shows up more than any other townsperson in this show. Which also leads to my theory that maybe he's the author. We see him all the time. Okay, so let's play with this theory, right? So say it is McGucket that's the author. Why is Stan working on this machine? But was Stan and McGucket friends in the past? And then whatever happened 30 years ago, maybe it just fried this dude's brain? And now Stan is trying to fix the machine so that he can fix his old buddy McGucket's brain. Now, truthfully, I could just claim I'm a genius and I was just like, you know, what about McGucket? But something happens in the secret code at the end of episode 3 that actually directed me back to McGucket. I know. One of the codes in the credits of the episode says, "Old man sleeping on the green. Can't help but wonder what he's seen." They're talking about McGucket because in this episode, it's a putt-putt, like a mini golf episode. And at one point, he is asleep on the course. What this code leads me to believe is that McGucket definitely knows more than he seems to know. Did I say that right? Regardless, the thing that's very interesting about trying to solve this mystery is that there is not a long list of characters that could be the author. Pretty much just the ones on the board. The show isn't a super complex, character-wise. There's a handful of characters that we see all of the time. And also, I will say in season 2 so far, the codes at the credits have been way more helpful than the codes last season. It seems like they're helping kind of guide us in the right direction. So let's break down the codes from this batch of episodes, starting with episode 2. We had, what kind of disaster indeed? Improper use of machinery could lead to utter catastrophe. It rhymes. This feels like it's in relation to the fallout shelter that we see in that episode. Whatever this disaster that the author was planning for, which I believe is directly related to the event that Bill speaks about last season. I mean, I haven't even mentioned this yet, but Bill actually shows up in episode 4 where he says the following things. "I've got big plans coming. Big things are coming. You can't stop me." Like, he says both of those things, which makes me think there's big things coming. And it probably is some sort of major disaster since the author was planning ahead with a fallout shelter that could keep him alive for 60 years. And this has to tie into whatever machine Stan is building in the basement, right? That's just storytelling 101. It would be weird if Stan was off doing his own thing and it has nothing to do with the major prophecy that's happening wherever Bill keeps being like, there's something big coming. Anyway, episode 3's codes, we already talked about the whole old man sleeping on the green one, but there was another one which was remember Big Henry. This is in relation to the most fucked up thing I've ever seen in a TV show. It's also probably the greatest moment I've ever witnessed on a television screen. Basically, it's in the mini golf episode, and Mabel is there's a mining themed hole on the course, and Mabel's in a competition with Pacifica Northwest, her rival, and there are little creatures that live in the mini golf course that run things. They're called Lilliputians. They're like little tiny golf ball people. So at one point in the underground mine themed hole, Mabel knocks her hole in, it drops down, and then all the coal mining little puttians are down there. And they're like, no, you can't take that ball across. There's been a gas leak. But the stakes are really high for them to help Mabel win the game. But they're like, you'll die. Anyone who tries to take that ball across will die. And Big Henry walks up. And Big Henry is like the biggest of the little puttians. And he goes, I'll take it. And then this little girl runs up. And she's like, no, Big Henry, we need you. And he's like, go home, Polly. And then he manages to like push it through the cave, through the mine. And he's breathing heavy, makes it, and he gets it. And Mabel's ball goes in the hole. And then Big Henry dies looking at a hand-drawn picture of Big Henry and Polly. What the actual fuck? I felt more emotion in that 60-second cutaway gag than I have in most movies. A literal tear dripped from my eye for Big Henry, the Lil Puttian. That's what, I mean, I don't mean to get off track here, but that's just what's so awesome about Gravity Falls is I care so deeply for little golf ball creatures that I only meet for one episode of this show, and about how they have a giant war going on amongst the factions of them. The show rules so hard, dude. Episode 4's codes are insane. The code being, we've all had some fun tonight, but let's not forget who the real puppet masters are. Reptoids who have infiltrated our government. Did Alex Jones guest write this fucking episode? What the fuck? That does lead me to think that my alien theory could be true, though. The next one is, no puppet strings can hold me down. So patiently I watch this town. Abnormal soon will be the norm. Enjoy the calm before the storm. This makes me feel like Bill is behind it. It all seems to have to do with some big disaster, some crazy thing that Bill is planning. I just don't know. But what I do know is that I need to lock in a prediction for who I think the author is for this batch of episodes. And basically, I have 3 major theories that all kind of work, but they all have at least one major flaw. I have my first theory, which is that Stan is the author, but he doesn't remember because his memory was wiped. We have my second theory, which is that the author is actually an alien that used to live in Gravity Falls. And my third theory, which is that Old Man McGucket is the author, but has lost his mind. Truthfully, at this point, the McGucket theory works the best, mostly because I don't know how many fingers he has. And I do know that Stan only has 5. Plus, we know that McGucket has the ability to invent things, and we have seen a lot of the author's inventions in this show. So that lines up. And we know that Bill is a big bad guy that messes with people's minds. Remember last season when he went into Stan's mind? So it's not unheard of to think that maybe Bill has done something to McGucket's mind. Just like, went up inside of McGucket's head, scrambled it all. It's like a Waffle House, just all the eggs scrambled. And that would explain why the shapeshifter in the shapeshifter episode said he hasn't been himself in 30 years. But also, we still have that theory, secret fourth theory, where the secret experiment that caused Mabel and Dipper to switch bodies, maybe when the shapeshifter said hasn't been himself in 30 years, he literally means hasn't been himself because he switched bodies with someone. All right, I'm going to be going with the Old Man McGucket theory for this section. I know it doesn't work 100%, but I just feel like it has less flaws than the other ones. I'm locking in Old Man McGucket. Let's go watch the next few episodes and see what else we can learn.
It could be the key to unlocking all the mysteries of Gravity Falls.
This is the big one.
We'll explain on the way!
A massive conspiracy is unraveling.
Are you seeing this?
Exposing the mysteries of Gravity Falls.
Girl with Blanchard. I live up in the mansion.
What is Blanchin?
Know the real mysteries.
Guys, look!
What does it mean?
When it's over, you'll know.
So then that would mean wrote the journal?
Holy shit. I just watched episodes 5, 6, and 7. And episode 7, dude, was incredible. So leading up to episode 7, I was really locked in trying to figure out how many fingers McGucket has. And that's, and then I was like, well, he does wear a cast, so maybe he only has 6 fingers on that one hand and then he cut it off and that's why he wears the cast, or maybe he just wears the cast to cover up the extra finger. And then I can't get over how incredible this was. So the main squad, Mabel, Dipper, the boys, they find out that the author's laptop that they found was made by McGucket Labs. So Dipper starts reworking all of his major theories and he yells out, "Old man McGucket wrote the journals." Now, before we even get into all of this, the second that Dipper said Old man McGucket wrote the journals, I was like, well, there goes that theory. That can't be the big reveal now because it was said here. You don't save your big reveal for the big reveal and then you have it earlier in the season just said blatantly. That's just not how it works. And sure enough, in episode 7, we find out that Old Man McGucket is not the author. But boy, is he something else. They really, really made it seem like McGucket was going to be the author in this episode. Like at one point, they confront McGucket about being the author. And he says, and I quote, "I can't remember what I used to be. Everything before 1982 is a blur." And then at one point they show him a certain page of the journal and he freaks out and he goes, "The blind eye, robes, the men, my mind, they did something." And this episode goes on to be my favorite episode yet. It's all about a secret society called the Blind Eye. And it's so badass, dude. It's made up of a collection of the townspeople, and they have a mind-wiping machine. So in this episode, Lazy Susan from the diner, she witnesses 5 gnomes stacked on top of each other. She then goes to call the police and inform them of such atrocities. But before she can call the cops, some secret society dudes in robes show up and kidnap her ass. And then we watch them wipe her memory of having ever seen the 5 gnomes stacked on top of each other. And we see some of the members of the secret society unmasked, like the guy Toby, who works for the newspaper. Gideon's dad, Bud, the car dealer guy, he's a part of it. And then their leader is this guy named Blind Ivan. But Blind Ivan, even though you would think that he might be the creator, the founder of the Blind Eye Society, he is not the founder. They do not remember who the founder is, ironically, because they use the memory gun on themselves so often that they just don't remember who started it. But they do know kind of the history of why the society was founded in the first place. Basically, the founder of the Blind Eye Society created it as a way to wipe the memories of the townspeople when they see something supernatural or mysterious that is very common in Gravity Falls. I guess like the trauma of just seeing the supernatural stuff all the time was doing more harm to the townspeople. So the Blind Eye Society was actually trying to help by wiping the memories of anyone who sees something wild. But the issue is that as they use the memory gun more and more on people, it starts causing their mind to break a little bit. And that's why everyone in Gravity Falls is kind of strange and weird, because this memory gun has been used on them all so often, it's beginning to ruin their minds, including the one and only Old Man McGucket, who we actually learn his first name in this episode. His first name is Fiddleford, which starts with an F. And when I saw that, I was like, wait a second. Am I going to be right? Is Old Man McGucket going to be the author? But then we actually, at the end of this episode, we get to see Old Man McGucket's memories that were wiped away. And dude, it's insane. We see a collection of McGucket's recordings from kind of as these mind wipings are taking place. It starts off with him looking like a regular guy, an intellectual guy, and this is what he says. "My name is Fiddleford Hadron McGucket, and I wish to unsee what I have seen. For the past year, I have been working as an assistant for a visiting researcher. He has been cataloging his findings about gravity falls in a series of journals. I helped him build a machine that he believed had the potential to benefit all of mankind. But something went wrong. I decided to quit the project, but I lie awake at night haunted by the thoughts of what I've done. I believe I have invented a machine that could erase my memories. And then he holds up the mind wiping machine that the Blind Eye Society uses. And essentially we find out that the founder of the Blind Eye Society is Old Man McGucket. Whatever he saw, he wanted to unsee so badly that he invented this machine to wipe his memory. And he used it on himself all the time to the point where he destroyed his mind and he became the bubbling hillbilly that he is now. Now, a super shocking thing about this is the revelation that he was actually the assistant to the author and was helping the author build the supercomputer thing that we've seen Stan working on underneath the Mystery Shack. We've learned so much here. We've learned that McGucket was working with the author, but then something went wrong, and whatever went wrong caused McGucket to be so horrified that he wanted to wipe his memory of having ever seen it. What happened? What went wrong? Then at the end of that episode, we see Stan working on the machine still, and he says, "Every day it's getting stronger. I don't care if it's dangerous. I don't care how long it takes. I'm going to pull this off and no one's going to get in my way." And as he's kind of doing this little very ominous speech, the camera pushes in on a framed picture that Stan has of Dipper and Mabel down there in the lab. And I guess the implication, story-wise, is that Dipper and Mabel are going to try to stop Stan from whatever it is that he's doing, which makes me think that maybe Stan actually is a supervillain, but he truly loves these kids. He would never do anything to harm them. I don't see Stan as becoming a supervillain. I mean, remember what McGucket says about the author. He says that the author believed that the machine had the potential to help the Earth, all of mankind. Is Stan the author? And does Stan think that the machine he's building is not a super weapon, but something that could help all of mankind? Or is Stan not the author, but he's trying to continue the mission of the author? Another thing that just kind of throws everything in disarray from this episode is that we've eliminated McGucket as a suspect for who the author could be, which we already didn't have a lot to work with. Now we have even less. But let's focus on one thing that McGucket says in this episode. McGucket says that he was helping a traveling researcher. The author is a traveling researcher. Focus in on the word traveling. When they say traveling, do they mean traveling from another planet, another galaxy? Could my alien theory actually be correct? But then, what is Stan's connection to the alien? Why would Stan be trying to complete the mission of the author who is an alien? I mean, you could say Stan was working with the alien on the machine, but we find out in this episode that McGucket was the author's assistant. McGucket was the one helping the author, not Stan. I have to lock in my theory that the author is an alien because the 6 fingers thing is kind of my major hurdle. Stan does not have 6 fingers. Therefore, Stan cannot be the author. Then McGucket is confirmed to not be the author, which means that the only theory that I have left is my alien theory. But even then, it does not explain why Stan is working on this machine. The show is genuinely incredible. I never in a million years expected the lore to go this deep. The Secret Society episode with the whole blind eye thing was so cool. So cool. Let's talk about the codes that we get from these episodes, starting with episode 5. The code for episode 5 was anything can happen. That's a joke from the episode. But we also get a bigger code from that says, winning hearts by daylight, possessing robots by moonlight. Her emotional baggage is a real fright. She has one name, Giffany. This is just a reference to the episode where Seuss is being hunted down by his virtual girlfriend. The show is awesome. Episode 6, we get the code. Check out Dr. Waddles' latest book, A Brief History of Oink, 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 Oink. This is in reference to one of the stories from this episode, which has multiple. But in this story, Waddles becomes a super genius. Voiced by Neil deGrasse Tyson, I'm pretty sure. We get another code that says animation is black magic. It's a reference to another one of the stories where claymation figures come to life and attack the gang. Then in episode 7's code, we get Gideon's tantrums, misspelled tattoos, Chandra's rejections, society's views, a fear of witches, a life of regret. These are the things that they try to forget. I believe that these are all reasons as to why the Blind Eye Society was wiping memories. Dude, I'm so hyped up right now, bro. I'm locking in my alien theory. There's a big part of me that feels like I've missed something important and that there's actually a simpler answer than an alien and I've just missed it. I've gotten really hung up on the 6 fingers thing and I'm terrified that it's going to be one of those things where it's like a character picks up their hand and then I see that they have 6 fingers and they've had it the whole time and I just missed it. But I just don't think that's the case. I've been trying to lock in on the hands. I'm locking in the alien theory. Let's go watch the next few episodes and see what we can learn.
Watch out!
Dipper, what is this?
Whoa, that is messed up!
I just watched episodes 8, 9, and 10. And what's very interesting about these 3 episodes is that they were fairly normal episodes. Like, not much talk about the big mystery at hand. It's just kind of regular episodic episodes with kind of a contained adventure in each one. Well, with one major exception. In episode 10, at the very end of the episode, we see McGucket. He is starting to go back to normal after, slowly fixing his memory after, he wiped it into oblivion. Well, he fixed the author's laptop that Dipper and them found, and he has a warning for Dipper. The apocalypse is coming. And then we see that the laptop actually has a countdown, and it's 21 hours until the big event. Now, this is the big event that we've been talking about all season. This was originally brought up last season by Bill, I'm fairly certain. Another interesting thing about episode 10 is that the codes in the credits for episodes 8 and 9, they were just jokes from the episodes. But episode 10's code says, Stan is not what he seems. Stan is not what he seems. Stan is not what he seems. It's also very important to note that I'm fairly certain that the next episode is the episode where we get the big reveal. So is episode 10's final credit code a Hail Mary of hey, this is your last chance. Stan is not what he seems. Guys, truthfully, I feel like I am on a pretty good track when it comes to my alien is the author theory. But then we get this whole Stan is not who he seems thing. And I go, okay, this is a kid's show. There has been no reference to any sort of aliens or extraterrestrials. However, we have now gotten a direct message from the show to us, the audience, that says Stan is not what he seems. That leads me to believe that maybe we need to switch gears and lock in with the Stan is the author theory. And truthfully, I really love my Stan is the author theory. I've talked about it a lot so far. I mean, basically, the theory is that Stan was the author, but he got his mind wiped, possibly by the Blind Eye Society. There's a lot of mind wiping happening in the show at this point. So 30 years ago, he gets his mind wiped, and now he's spent the last 30 years trying to remember who he was, trying to get back on track to what his mission was, trying to get back on track of fixing this machine. It really truly feels like Stan is going to be revealed as the author. But there is one major flaw in that theory, and that is the fact that Stan does not have 6 fingers. And so that makes things complicated. I mean, I don't even know who else to accuse at this point. We know that McGucket is definitely not the author. Other people that we've accused is someone like Seuss, but I now know, I think for certain, that there's no way that Seuss could be the author, because we get an episode in this season where Dipper and Mabel go back in time 10 years ago. And 10 years ago, Seuss was a little kid. So he could not have been the author 30 years ago. Does that make sense? I don't know how old I thought Seuss was at first. Apparently he's like in his 20s, like his early 20s. And then, you know, there's Stan, of course, who we've been heavily accusing of being the author. Not that being the author is a bad thing that we know of, but he does not have 6 fingers. Who does that even leave us, dude? Well, it leaves us with the idea that the author is someone who we have never met before. That's how I originally came up with the alien theory. And, you know, along with the fact that they have 6 fingers, that made me feel like, well, maybe it's not a human. Maybe it's a magical or supernatural creature. We see so many of them in Gravity Falls. Why not? I mean, we even got moments last season where they find a secret bedroom in the Mystery Shack, and it seems like Stan misses whoever used to live in there. That's why I came up with the idea of maybe it was a companion or a girlfriend or even a wife. Or we brought up the idea that maybe when Stan is looking at those glasses that were left in that bedroom, he was looking at his own glasses and missing the person that he used to be, longing to be back 30 years ago before his mind got destroyed, much like how McGucket's mind got destroyed. And we've seen that McGucket has been able to slowly start getting his mind back and remembering who he used to be. He's able to do more engineering type things like fixing the author's laptop. Maybe the last 30 years has been Stan slowly getting back to who he used to be. Or, you know, maybe it's not his old self that he's mourning. Maybe it's a love interest, as I mentioned. And which leads me to my favorite theory from season 1 or season 2, which was my theory that Stan cloned Carla Hot Pants McCorkle, the girlfriend who broke up with him back in the day and left him for another guy. He cloned her using a picture of her in the copy machine that we saw in season 1, where Dipper was able to create clones using the copy machine that Stan has in the Mystery Shack. I really, really loved the idea that Stan's companion or best friend or girlfriend was a clone that he created. And when that clone died, it caused him to be just as heartbroken as when it originally happened. That's what led us to several things, right? That's what led us to, well, okay, maybe the alien was Stan's love interest. Maybe because we need the whole 6 fingers thing. Basically, all of the theories that I have done in the last video and in this video are all very similar. They're all right here in a Venn diagram of Stan, McGucket, and Seuss. Maybe not Seuss, maybe the alien. And since all of these theories kind of have some things in common, maybe the best way to try to solve this thing is by taking out the parts that just don't work, like the idea that Stan does not have 6 fingers. That's not even an idea. That's just a fact. So if we remove that from the theories and we move other stuff like, well, there's been no mention of aliens. We remove stuff like Seuss was not old enough to have been the author 30 years ago. So we take away all of the things that don't work about my 3 theories, my 3 main theories, and let's just combine the elements from each that do work, that I do really like, that I do think that I'm onto something with. So what do we get when we add the elements that seem to work and remove the elements that don't work? Well, I'll tell you, we get the greatest theory of all time. Hold on to your lug nuts. It's time for an overhaul. My Stan theory is the theory that works the best all around. The only issue is that he does not have 6 fingers. Is there a way to fix that flaw? Stan not having 6 fingers is what opens the door to the other theories, right? Because that's the only thing about the Stan theory that doesn't work. So if Stan doesn't have 6 fingers, someone else has to be the author. But Stan is still involved in a major way because he's working on the machine in the Mystery Shack for the past 30 years. Add the elements of the secret bedroom with the glasses that Stan seems to be mourning over. If Stan doesn't have 6 fingers, then that means Stan is not the author, which means that the glasses do not belong to him in a formal version of himself. It belongs to a different person. This exact thought process and reasoning is what led to my favorite theory yet, which was the clone of Carla using the copy machine. And I would love to double down on that theory, but Carla has not come up in a really long time. And this is game time. This is our last chance to lock in the winning prediction. But let's take away the part of that theory that doesn't work, which is the fact that Carla hasn't come up in a long time and a love interest type of plot hasn't come up with Stan in a long time. So let's take the element from that theory that I really enjoy, which is Stan using the copy machine that we see him own in the Mystery Shack that creates clones. So Stan has a copier machine that makes clones. And when we look back to the last time that we saw the copy machine that makes clone used, we saw that Dipper created Paper Jam Dipper. There was an issue with the copy machine. There was a paper jam, and it caused a clone to be made of Dipper that had some major issues. If Stan has access to making clones, and we know that we're looking for someone who's not Stan, but in close proximity to Stan, maybe someone that Stan really misses, Stan, who is very self-centered, who is very selfish, who would miss himself, maybe Stan, the Stan that we've been seeing the entire time, is not the real Stan. Maybe this is a clone that the real Stan made to help him with his experiments as the author. But when the original Stan, the Stan who used the copy machine to make a clone Stan, something happens, maybe he gets sucked up into the machine, maybe he dies, maybe his memory gets wiped, something goes wrong. Then clone Stan, the Stan that we've been with the entire time of this show, who only has 5 fingers, has been trying for the last 30 years to get OG Stan back, or at least complete the mission that OG Stan had invented him for, that had created him for, that had brought him to life to help with. But Chase, what are you talking about? How does that fix our major issue, which is the fact that Stan only has 5 fingers? The original Stan had 6. The original Stan had 6 fingers, but when he made the copy of himself, something went wrong, just like with Paper Jam Dipper, but just not that extreme. All that happened to the clone Stan was that it didn't copy over all 6 fingers, and this Stan only has 5. That's why when the code at the end of the credits says Stan is not what he seems, it's because he's not the original Stan. He is the Stan that Dipper and Mabel know. He's the only Stan that we've ever met, but he's not the original Stan. The original Stan, something happened to 30 years ago. And clone Stan, because remember from the clone episode with Dipper, every clone has the same thought process, almost the same personality as the original, which means that clone Stan would want to finish the mission that original Stan had started. But Chase, I know what you're thinking. We know that there is a major issue when it comes to these clones, and that it's any sort of water destroys them, kills them. And we've seen this Stan get wet, haven't we? Well, I don't know if we have. If you remember in the pool episode, we never see Stan get in the water, I don't think. His whole plot line for that episode was having a rivalry with Gideon over the prime real estate of a certain chair. We never see him get in the water. Could that have been a hint that he is actually one of the paper clones? But that being said, we have seen him drink sodas. And famously, that's how Tyrone which was Dipper's first clone, Tyrone the clone, died by drinking a soda. And so maybe, oh man, maybe he's just pretending to drink the soda, or maybe he invented, because the author was a great inventor, maybe he invented a liquid-free soda that wouldn't cause him to get wet and die, right? Oh man, every theory I've come up with has at least one major flaw. I want to say that the alien theory is the most possible, but they just haven't made any sort of reference to an alien, but they have made reference to Stan not being what he seems. So I think that what I'm going to have to do is overlook the big gaping issue, which is that we've seen Stan drink soda, which would be impossible if he was one of the paper clones. I'm going to overlook that, and I think I've got to lock that in. Oh man, I'm like shaking. I don't want to fuck this one up. The show is so good. I want to do well. But that's all I got, man. But you know what? If it ends up being an alien, I think that we can all take solace in knowing I was right there. If it ends up being Seuss and Deuce, we can say, hey, we called that a long time ago. I'm locking in Stan's a clone. That's what I'm locking in. Hey, there's only one way to find out. Let's go watch the reveal.
To Uncle Stan, not just a great uncle.
The greatest uncle.
Kids, there's something I should tell you. Oh no!
You don't know your uncle at all.
Brand new Gravity Falls, Monday, March 9th at 8:30 on Disney XD.
Does a secret twin brother count as a clone, perchance? If a secret twin brother counts as a clone, I nailed it. I just watched episodes 11, and then I went ahead and watched episode 12 because I needed some answers. The reveal was honestly so sick, dude. This was so awesome. It's not often that you watch a show that's kind of building up to a big reveal and then it's completely satisfying, but this one truly was. Like, just little things like the fact that twins typically run in families. So Mabel and Dipper are twins. I don't know why it never crossed my mind to think that Grunkle Stan, their great uncle, could have also had a twin. I'm getting a little bit ahead of myself. Let me explain. So in the episode, Stan gets arrested by the government for his work on the machine underneath the Mystery Shack. Basically, they think that he is a supervillain who is building a supercomputer that is going to destroy the world. And it even gets to the point where Dipper starts to believe that Stan is actually evil. And he thinks this because they find a bunch of Stan's secret identities, like fake identities, passports, driver's license. They find a newspaper article saying that Stan Pines died. So they're like, oh my God, this guy isn't even our great uncle. He just stole our actual great uncle's identity. We don't know this guy. Meanwhile, the countdown for the machine is just ticking down, and it's up to Dipper, Mabel, and Seuss to stop it before it hits 0. But Stan shows up at the last second and begs them not to hit the button. Now, Dipper does not trust Stan, if that's even his real name. But Mabel, who is the only one that can stop the machine in time, decides she trusts her grunkle, Stan. She does not hit the button. The countdown hits 0. The machine activates, and a person walks out of the machine, and that person is Stan. And when this happened, dude, I started screaming. I was like, it's a clone. It's a clone. I called it. I forgot that twins were a thing. I really thought that my clone theory was correct. The big reveal is that the author is Stan's twin brother, Stan. One is named Stanford, and one is named Stan Lee, not to be confused with the comic book guy, Stan Lee. So we call them Stan and Ford. We get a whole background to their life story. Stan and Ford, they were twin brothers. They were best friends, just like Mabel and Dipper are. But Stan was always kind of a fuck up, while Ford was a super genius. After Stan accidentally, quote unquote, messed up Ford's future plans, being able to go to the best college in the country, he messes it up by accidentally destroying his experiment, his machine that he had made for the science fair. It caused a huge fight between them, and they did not speak for 10 years. While they were separated, Stan was a traveling con artist, while Ford was a very successful scientist, very smart. He got given a grant to work on his experiments and his studies about anomalies, which took him to Gravity Falls, Oregon, which seemed to be the hotspot for anomalies. This is where he did all of his research and he filled up the 3 journals. However, he started to go crazy, especially after his assistant, McGucket, accidentally got a look into the machine that they were building, which was designed to be like a portal to other dimensions. And he caught a glimpse of something that terrified him to the point where he wanted to wipe it from his memory, which leads us to the whole blind eye storyline. Ford begins to become extremely paranoid and just kind of going crazy. He calls up Stan after 10 years of not speaking and asks him to come visit him. Once he gets there, he says, "I need you to take this journal and go to the edge of the earth and hide it someplace that no one will ever find it." Basically, this leads to a big fight, and Ford gets sucked up into the machine, which then destroys itself. And now Stan is standing there, his brother just sucked up into a machine, and he has no idea what just happened. Stan then spends the next 30 years using the journal that he has, trying to find the other journals so that he can fix this machine and get his brother back. Stan doesn't even care that this machine could bring on the end of the world. He needs to bring his brother back. Now, he is back now. Their relationship still seems to be pretty volatile. It's pretty strained. But I imagine that by the end of the season, by the time we get to the season finale, that everybody's going to be best friends and one big happy family. Also, for the 6 fingers thing, Ford has just a genetic thing where he has 6 fingers on each hand. It's not an alien thing at all. My bad. It really was a great reveal, man. And then just going back into the backstory of the 2 twin brothers who had a major falling out, and it led to a devastating second half of both of their lives. And, you know, it's kind of heartbreaking when you look at what the first half of Stan's life was too. He really had a hard go of it. Makes it even more kind of emotional that he finally has found something that makes him truly happy, which is Dipper and Mabel. Episodes 10 and 11 solved or revealed to us every major mystery and then some, like what happened to Lazy Susan's eyelid. That was Stan's doing. We find out how Stan got his tattoo, which was there was a symbol on one of the machines the night that him and Ford fought and Ford got sucked in the machine, and he burned it. It got burned into his back. Now, this does bring us to a dilemma, right? The title of this video is, well, I don't know if it's the title of the video. The point of these videos were, can I solve who is the author? We have gotten the reveal of the author. I did not solve it, and that's okay. However, there's a whole second half of this season. I imagine it's going to be leading up to the big event that Bill has been talking about this entire time. I imagine it's going to be a big thing where Dipper and Mabel, and now there's 2 Grunkles, are going to have to save the world. I'm afraid that after the reveal happens, a bunch of people are going to click off the video, and then it's going to kind of ruin the watch time of the video. So just, classic algorithm stuff. But I do not want to leave you guys hanging. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to just watch the rest of the season, and then I will jump back in here for one last section where I just kind of talk about my thoughts about the rest of the season. Not super in depth, just kind of casual talking about if I like it or if I don't like it. Also, over on my Patreon next week, I will be putting out a video where I deep dive on the Gravity Falls wiki page, and I just kind of go episode by episode and see if I missed any major clues, any major codes. I imagine I missed some major stuff. So it'll be really cool to just kind of do a deep dive and learn about all the things that I missed. If you're interested in that kind of thing, my Patreon's $2 a month. There's a link down below in the description. So I'm going to go watch the rest of season 2 of Gravity Falls, and I will jump right back in here momentarily.
Will you follow me?
To the ends of the earth.
Good, because that's where we're heading.
The incredible final showdown begins.
It's finally happening! This is bad! Mabel, come in, Mabel! The nachos tricked me!
It's the biggest Gravity Falls ever.
I'll be fine. You go help the others.
Let's do this! It's not over yet.
So this is how the world ends. Not with a bang, but with a boop.
I think this has become one of my favorite shows ever. I've been kind of on a roll lately on the channel with just hitting some absolute awesome shows. I watched Veronica Mars recently, fell in love with that show. Now I'm watching Gravity Falls. I fell in love with this show. The second half of season 2, after the reveal of who the author is, like immediately after, it kind of just goes back to being what it is at its core, which is just an episodic show where Mabel and Dipper get into shenanigans. But now there is a kind of undercurrent of the big event that Bill has been teasing since season 1. And now we have two kind of parental characters that Mabel and Dipper can bounce off of. You have Stan and Ford. And it's very cool because there's parallels between Dipper and Mabel. Mabel and Stan have a lot in common. They like having fun. They like being silly. They like goofing off. Meanwhile, Dipper and Ford have a love of the mystery and adventure and intelligence. There's an episode in the second half that really nails down this theme where Dipper and Ford love a Dungeons and Dragons type game called Dungeons, Dungeons, and More Dungeons, where Mabel and Stan just want to watch the finale of The Duck Detective. And of course, the moral of that episode is that it's always better if they all work together. It's not important to be super smart. It's also important to have an imagination and to be fun and to be carefree. They both learn a lot about each other. But the second half of this season, dude, I became so attached to the characters. When it comes to the machine down in the basement, Ford has taken full control of that. Him and Stan have a deal. Stan, you take care of the kids. I'll handle this mess that you've made by bringing me back. Stan's upset with Ford because Ford has not thanked him for bringing him back and for working his ass off for 30 years trying to bring him back. But Ford dismantles the portal, but there's a deeper issue. The starting up of this portal created a break in the dimension, an interdimensional rift. We also get some more backstory between Bill and Ford. Bill and Ford were originally working together because Bill tricked Ford using flattery and boosting his ego into thinking that they were friends. Meanwhile, Bill was using Ford as a puppet in an effort to take the nightmare realm and bring it to Earth, to the universe, our universe. Essentially, Bill wants to take over the world and make it weird, which leads to the giant 4-part finale called Weirdmageddon. In the build up to Weirdmageddon and during all this craziness, it really is an epic finale. It's not often that when I do these shows that I'm like, dude, just go watch the show. Don't worry about what I have to say about it. Go watch the show. The finale is incredible. But one thing that's awesome for us is we do get aliens. The idea is that maybe Gravity Falls was created by a UFO crashing into the Earth, and it creates the kind of the valley that Gravity Falls takes place in. And what Ford says to Dipper is this UFO crashing on Gravity Falls what causes all of the weird things to happen? Or do all of the weird things that happen cause the UFO to crash there specifically? It's very interesting. The lore of this show is very light-handed. It's not heavy-handed. I think there's books and stuff that have come out, like journals and stuff like that. I imagine they kind of dive deeper into this lore of how it all happened and how the anomalies take place. Or at least I hope so, because I would love to learn more. But this all builds up to an epic finale where Bill has taken over, all is lost, Ford's been kidnapped, Mabel gets kidnapped at one point. It's insanity, dude. The whole town has to come together to try to stop Bill. Turns out there was a prophecy all along, and all of the symbols that the characters wear on them, like Mabel's rainbow, the shooting star, Dipper's hat, Stan's hat symbol, Seuss's question mark, even characters that you wouldn't thought. I don't even have on the board, like Robbie, Wendy's ex-boyfriend. He's had this symbol on his sweatshirt the entire show, and that symbol plays a major part in stopping Bill. But in one of the most shocking and devastating things that I've ever had to go through, They fail because Stan and Ford are not able to keep themselves from fighting long enough to defeat Bill. And Bill has the upper hand once again. There's nothing that they can do to stop him. Bill is going to kill Dipper and Mabel. And the two twin brothers, Stan and Ford, are distraught. And after feeling so inadequate and feeling like the fuck up and the screw up his whole life compared to his brother Ford, Stan comes up with the great idea of how they can defeat Bill. And in doing so, he has to sacrifice himself. They switch clothes. Bill thinks that he's going to be going into Ford's mind. It's actually Stan's mind. And then Ford has to pull out the memory wiping gun and destroy Stan's memory with Bill inside of it. It kills Bill for good. Kill Bill Volume 2 for good. But we also lose Stan. And the kids, Mabel and Dipper, Mabel and Dipper lose their grunkle Stan that they had the best summer of their life with. And he doesn't even remember them. Thankfully, at the end of the episode, Mabel is going through her summer scrapbook with him, and it actually jogs his memory. And by the end of the finale, he actually remembers who he is, and we did not lose Stan. I really, truly thought that the show was going to end with that kind of bittersweet tragedy of losing Stan, but Stan, I mean, oh God, I shed a tear, dude. Like, I genuinely got emotional. Right as Stan's mind is being wiped, he looks at the camera and he goes, maybe I'm good for something after all. And he's like looking at a picture of Mabel and Dipper, and he knows, I saved these kids, and that's all that matters to me. Oh God, dude, I got really emotional. It was everything you could ever want from a show. Dare I say it, this might be one of the only perfect shows I've ever watched. If there's shows that are as good as this that I have not seen, please comment down below. I need more of this in my life. And then like the loose ends tie up for everybody. McGucket becomes super rich, and Seuss takes over the Mystery Shack because Stan and Ford are finally going on an adventure together, the two brothers, after 40 years of being apart, which is a very long time. And then Mabel and Dipper have to go back home because the summer's over. And this is the end of the show. The end of the show is them saying goodbye to all of their friends that they've made in Gravity Falls, and they have to go back home. And part of me was like, they'll be back next summer. Surely the show will keep going, but the show doesn't keep going. And I guess that's okay. I'm pretty emotionally, I'm kind of distraught. I really love this show. I don't want it to be over. Well, guys, there's only one last thing to talk about. Hopefully you didn't already click off the video, because in my last video, Gravity Falls Part 1, I made a promise about if I reached 30,000 likes, I would make a certain channel. Well, the hints to find it are in this video. So good luck.